The quantum signature analysis chamber hummed with an eerie silence as Dr. Imani Okik reviewed the holographic data streams. Her fingers, calloused from years of tenosocial research, traced the intricate patterns that revealed humanity's fatal flaw, or so the Galactic Concordance claimed. Humanity's crime was elegantly complex. They weren't violent by nature, but by potential. Human neural patterns showed an unprecedented capacity for radical adaptation that terrified the galaxy's most advanced civilizations. Where other species followed established technological and social trajectories with predictable precision, humans invented entirely new paradigms with breathtaking frequency. The Zarkex delegation had presented their case with chilling bureaucratic efficiency. Ambassador Clyrix, a crystalline being whose body reflected multiple spectral dimensions, projected holographic evidence of human instability. Clips played of human innovations that had disrupted established galactic technologies. The quantum entanglement communication networks, bioadaptive nanotechnology, and computational systems that could learn and mutate faster than any known algorithm. Humanity represents an existential threat, Clyrix had stated, his crystalline form shifting colors with each syllable, not through aggression, but through unpredictability. One human mind can generate more disruptive concepts in a day than our entire concordance produces in a decade. Commander Elena Rodriguez stood in the observation deck of the last human command ship, the Prometheus Unchained. Her cybernetic eye, a remnant of an experimental military augmentation program, scanned the massive alien fleet surrounding them. Each warship was a monument to controlled, predictable technological evolution. Humanity's ships, by contrast, looked like beautiful accidents, asymmetrical, modified beyond their original designs, bearing the marks of countless improvisations. The actual expulsion was almost clinical in its precision. Massive gravitational displacement generators created corridors through space, herding human colonies like cattle. Planetary defense systems were systematically neutralized. Entire star systems that had taken generations to colonize were reduced to abandoned husks in mere hours. What the Galactic Concordance didn't understand was the nature of human memory and cultural resilience. Each ship carried more than people. They carried entire cultural ecosystems. Digital archives, genetic repositories, collective knowledge systems that could reconstruct civilization from the most minimal resources. Lieutenant Yasmin Chen, the ship's quantum communications specialist, worked frantically in the background. Her fingers danced across holographic interfaces, creating redundant communication networks that could survive even total technological collapse. She was encoding humanity's entire technological and cultural knowledge into quantum-encrypted data streams that could be reconstructed from the most minimal signal fragments. "They think they're erasing us," she muttered, a slight smile crossing her face. "They have no idea how wrong they are." The final act of the expulsion was a massive energy pulse that would disable all human-originated technologies within the designated exile zones. It was meant to be a final humiliation, a technological neutering that would prevent any rapid reconstruction. Elena watched the pulse approach, her cybernetic eye calculating its quantum signature with cold precision. Around her, the crew of the Prometheus Unchained prepared not for defeat, but for the most important mission in human history, survival and eventual return. As the energy wave approached, Lieutenant Chen completed her final data transmission. Millions of years of human knowledge, compressed into quantum-encrypted fragments, would survive. The Galactic Concordance believed they were cutting humanity from the cosmic tapestry. They were wrong. They were simply providing the conditions for humanity's most remarkable transformation. The energy pulse struck, darkness descended, and in that darkness, the seeds of humanity's revenge were already taking root. The planet New Meridian screamed hostility from its very core. Sulfuric geysers erupted without warning. Magnetic storms turned electronic equipment into paperweights within hours, and the ground itself seemed to shift with a malevolent intelligence. This was no ordinary world of exile. It was a planetary nightmare designed to crush hope. Dr. Aisha Nakamura stood at the entrance of the first underground settlement, her environmental suit covered in a layer of corrosive mineral dust. Around her, the first wave of human colonists transformed what should have been a death sentence into the most audacious survival experiment in galactic history. The settlement looked nothing like the carefully planned colonies humans had established before their exile. It was a living organism of human ingenuity, modular habitats carved directly into the planet's rock formations, adaptive infrastructure that could reconfigure based on environmental conditions, and communication networks that used the planet's own electromagnetic anomalies as transmission channels. "We're not just surviving," Aisha muttered into her suit's communication system. "We're learning the language of this world." Her team had discovered something the initial planetary surveys had missed entirely. New Meridian wasn't just hostile, it was impossibly complex. The planet's geological systems operated on principles that defied conventional planetary science. Mineral structures that should have been inert contained complex molecular networks that responded to specific electromagnetic frequencies. In the central research hub, Marcus Rodriguez, a distant relative of the original commander Elena Rodriguez, was piecing together a revolutionary theory. The planet wasn't just a place of survival. It was a testing ground, a living laboratory that would force humanity to reimagine everything they knew about planetary adaptation. "Look at this," he said, projecting a holographic model that showed the planet's core interactions. The image was a symphony of impossible connections, mineral networks that communicated like neural systems, electromagnetic fields that shifted with almost sentient precision. Their first major breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Karen Liu, a former deep-sea engineer, realized that the planet's seemingly random geological activity followed a complex but predictable pattern. It was like deciphering an alien language. Each geological event was a word, each magnetic storm a sentence in a conversation humans had never learned to hear. The first sustainable agricultural system was nothing short of miraculous. Using a combination of genetically modified extremophile organisms and adaptive nano-cultivation techniques, the humans transformed small sections of the planet's surface into productive growing zones. These weren't traditional farms. They were living, breathing ecosystems that could rapidly adapt to the planet's mercurial conditions. But survival was more than just scientific innovation. The human settlements developed a unique social structure born of necessity. Traditional hierarchies dissolved, replaced by a fluid system of expertise and adaptive leadership. Someone who could solve a critical survival problem today might be leading a crucial mission tomorrow, regardless of their previous status. Paulo Santos, a former corporate middle manager, found himself managing complex resource allocation systems that would have been impossible in humanity's previous civilization. His team developed a real-time adaptive distribution network that could redirect resources, reconfigure living spaces, and allocate critical survival tasks with machine-like efficiency. The first major test came 6 months into their colonization. A massive electromagnetic storm swept across the planet, the kind of event that would have destroyed conventional human settlements. Instead, the new Meridian colonies not only survived but used the storm's energy to power critical infrastructure. "We're not just adapting," Aisha told the colony's central council during a late-night strategy session. "We're becoming something new. This planet isn't our prison. It's our crucible." By the end of the first year, what had been a seemingly impossible exile had transformed into something extraordinary. The Galactic Concordance's monitoring systems, those that still functioned, showed something impossible. The human colony wasn't just surviving on New Meridian. They were thriving. And they were just getting started. The research complex stretched beneath New Meridian's volatile surface like a technological neural network, a labyrinth of interconnected laboratories that pulsed with more energy than the planet's own electromagnetic core. Dr. Zara Okoye stood at the epicenter of humanity's most ambitious technological resurrection, surrounded by equipment cobbled together from salvage, imagination, and pure desperation. Her team wasn't just rebuilding technology. They were reimagining it entirely. The Adaptive Resonance Network began as a moonshot project that most would have dismissed as impossible. Traditional communication systems relied on predictable signal transmission, fixed frequencies, and established protocols. Zara's approach was fundamentally different. A communication network that was alive, adaptive, and virtually undetectable. In the main quantum computation chamber, holographic displays showed cascading algorithms that seemed to breathe and mutate in real time. Each line of code was more than a set of instructions. It was a living organism of information, capable of restructuring itself based on environmental conditions, potential threats, and emerging opportunities. We're not just creating a communication system, Zara explained to her core team during a late-night strategy session. We're building a technological ecosystem. The breakthrough came from an unexpected intersection of disciplines. Dr. Ramon Gonzalez, a former climate engineer, had been studying the electromagnetic anomalies of New Meridian. His research on planetary magnetic field interactions merged with Dr. Okoye's quantum communication theories in a moment of pure scientific serendipity. Their first working prototype looked nothing like a traditional communication device. It was a crystalline structure that seemed to grow organically, its external surface shifting between transparency and complex geometric patterns. When activated, it didn't transmit signals so much as it wove information through the planet's own electromagnetic fabric. The initial test was both terrifying and magnificent. The prototype didn't just send a message, it became the message. Information flowed like a living current, adapting to environmental interference, splitting and reforming in ways that defied conventional communication theory. Elsewhere in the complex, Dr. Elena Chen led a team developing what they called adaptive fabrication technology. Traditional manufacturing relied on fixed designs and rigid production processes. Their new system could literally think its way through production challenges, redesigning components in real time based on available materials and immediate needs. A broken communication array could now be reconstructed using materials that bore no resemblance to its original components. A damaged environmental suit could regenerate itself, drawing molecular structures from surrounding materials. It was manufacturing as a form of problem-solving intelligence. The technological implications were staggering. Each piece of equipment became more than a tool. It was a potential solution waiting to be activated. Limitations became opportunities. Constraints became creative challenges. Jacob Rodriguez, the youngest member of the research team, discovered an unexpected application during a routine maintenance check. The adaptive fabrication system could learn from its own mistakes, creating increasingly sophisticated solutions with each iteration. What would have taken years of traditional research now happened in hours, sometimes minutes. It's like the technology is alive, he told Zora during one of their strategy meetings. Not just functional, but actually learning. The Galactic Concordance's technological monitoring systems, those that still functioned after the exile, would have been completely baffled. These weren't improvements to existing technologies. This was an entirely new technological paradigm. By the end of the first development cycle, the research team had created something unprecedented. Their communication and fabrication systems weren't just advanced, they were evolutionary. Each technological solution carried within it the potential for future adaptation, a kind of technological DNA that could grow and transform. Zara looked out over the research complex, watching holographic displays that showed the intricate dance of their new technologies. They hadn't just survived their exile. They were creating something that would fundamentally change how intelligence itself was understood. We're not reconstructing our old civilization, she whispered to herself. We're building something entirely new. The technological revolution had begun. The Genesis chamber was unlike any medical facility in human history. Suspended between clinical precision and organic chaos, it represented humanity's most radical approach to survival, a place where the very concept of human biology was being rewritten. Dr. Imani O'Keefe moved between cultivation tanks with the precision of a surgeon and the wonder of an artist. Each tank contained a potential future of human existence, not just modified organisms, but entire evolutionary possibilities compressed into living prototypes. The deep space variants weren't simply genetic modifications. They were humanity's most audacious scientific experiment, deliberate, controlled evolution. Her primary subject today was Project Horizon, a collaboration between genetic engineers, quantum biologists, and planetary adaptation specialists. The subject floating in the central tank represented something entirely new, a human organism designed to thrive in environments that would obliterate conventional life. Kai Martinez, the lead biomechanical engineer, reviewed the latest neurological scans. "The synaptic restructuring is unlike anything we've ever seen," he muttered, tracing holographic neural pathways that branched and reconnected in impossible geometries. "We're not just adapting human biology. We're creating an entirely new form of intelligence." The variants developed under O'Keefe's supervision had capabilities that would have seemed like science fiction mere decades ago. Respiratory systems that could extract oxygen from minimal atmospheric conditions, cellular structures that could repair radiation damage almost instantaneously, neural networks capable of processing environmental data at speeds that made traditional computer systems look archaic. But the most remarkable breakthrough was something far more subtle. These new human variants possessed an unprecedented level of environmental integration. They didn't just survive in hostile environments. They communicated with them. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a xenobiological psychologist, described it as a form of biological communication. "It's not just adaptation," she explained during a research review. "It's a dialogue. The organism doesn't just respond to the environment, it negotiates with it." The first full-scale test came unexpectedly. A massive solar radiation event swept through the New Meridian Research Complex, the kind of cosmic storm that would have killed conventional life forms within seconds. The deep space variants not only survived but seemed to draw energy from the radiation, their biological systems transforming the potentially lethal environment into a source of biological fuel. Aria Chen, the youngest of the test subjects, described the experience in ways that challenged human understanding of perception. "It's like hearing colors," she told the research team. "Like tasting electromagnetic frequencies. The environment isn't something external anymore. It's an extension of consciousness." The ethical debates were intense. Some researchers argued they were creating post-human species. Others saw it as the next stage of human evolution. The variants themselves existed in a liminal space, neither fully human by traditional definitions, nor entirely alien. Dr. O'Keefe understood the deeper implication. This wasn't just about survival. It was about reimagining the very definition of intelligence and adaptation. The genetic modifications went far beyond physical capabilities. The variants developed complex social structures that defied traditional human hierarchies. Communication happened through subtle biochemical exchanges, neural network synchronizations that made verbal language seem primitive. In the observation chamber, a group of variants worked on a complex planetary adaptation problem. To an outside observer, it might have looked like a meditation session. In reality, they were solving multidimensional environmental challenges through a form of collective consciousness that merged individual intelligence into a fluid, adaptive network. "We're creating something that the Galactic Concordance cannot comprehend," Dr. Rodriguez told her team. "Not a weapon, not a defense mechanism, but a form of existence so fundamentally different that it challenges every present notion of life itself." The final report submitted to the colony's Research Council was deceptively simple, but between its clinical lines lay a revolutionary truth. Humanity was no longer just adapting to survive. They were evolving to thrive. The Starship Horizon Weaver moved through uncharted space like a phantom, its adaptive camouflage rendering it nearly invisible against the cosmic background. Captain Layla Mkosi understood that this wasn't just a mission of exploration. It was humanity's most intricate game of cosmic chess. Each sector they passed became a potential seed of human civilization, not through conquest, but through an almost organic process of integration and adaptation. The ship was more than a vessel. It was a living blueprint of human potential. The crew represented humanity's new evolutionary approach. Dr. Miguel Santos, the ship's xenoecologist, monitored potential colonization zones with a methodology that was part scientific analysis, part intuitive understanding. Beside him, Lieutenant Area Chen, one of the deep space variants, processed astronomical data through neural interfaces that blurred the line between biological perception and computational analysis. Their target wasn't just habitable planets. They were searching for ecological systems that could be transformed, worlds that seemed inhospitable but contained the raw potential for human adaptation. The ship's adaptive technologies were a marvel of human innovation. Its hull could restructure at the molecular level, absorbing and repurposing materials from asteroid fields, solar winds, and interstellar debris. Communication systems wove through quantum entanglement, creating networks that were virtually undetectable by conventional tracking methods. "We're not colonizing," Miguel explained during one of their strategy sessions. "We're negotiating with entire planetary ecosystems." Their approach was fundamentally different from traditional colonization. Where previous galactic civilizations saw planets as resources to be exploited, the Horizon Weaver's crew saw them as potential partners in a complex ecological dance. The first potential colonization target appeared on their sensors, a planet orbiting a volatile red dwarf star. Traditional planetary surveys would have dismissed it immediately. Extreme radiation levels, constant geological activity, atmospheric composition that seemed wildly unstable. To the Horizon Weaver's crew, it looked like an opportunity. Aria's neural interfaces began a complex analysis that went far beyond traditional scientific observation. She wasn't just studying the planet. She was communicating with it, parsing its electromagnetic signatures, understanding its geological rhythms. "It's alive," she reported, her voice carrying a mixture of scientific precision and something closer to reverence. "Not just in the biological sense. The entire planetary system is a complex, adaptive network." The colonization process was nothing like historical human expansions. No massive terraforming equipment. No resource extraction. Instead, small adaptive modules would be deployed, living systems that could integrate with the planet's existing ecological networks. Captain Nkosi watched the first deployment with a sense of anticipation that went beyond military strategy. These weren't colonists in the traditional sense. They were ecological translators, creating bridges between human potential and planetary systems. The adaptive modules looked like nothing humans had previously used for planetary settlement. Part biological, part technological, they were living systems that could rapidly transform based on local environmental conditions. Within weeks, they would become indistinguishable from the planet's native ecosystems. "We're not conquering," Miguel said, reviewing the initial deployment data. "We're becoming." Their expansion strategy confounded every previous model of galactic colonization. No massive infrastructure, no clear territorial boundaries, just a fluid, adaptive presence that could emerge, transform, and integrate with remarkable speed. The Galactic Concordance's monitoring systems, those that remained functional, would have found this approach incomprehensible. These weren't traditional colonies. They were living, breathing ecological interfaces that could appear and disappear with remarkable fluidity. By the time the Horizon Weaver completed its first expansion cycle, they had established potential human presence in 6 planetary systems that would have been considered completely uninhabitable by previous standards. Layla Mkosi looked at the holographic display showing their expansion trajectory. It wasn't a straight line. It was more like a complex neural network, each point of contact a potential seed of human potential. "We're not just exploring," she whispered to herself. "We're reimagining what it means to exist in the cosmos." The silent expansion had begun. The Concordance research vessel Quantum Probe drifted through what should have been an unremarkable sector of space. Commander Kvex, a crystalline intelligence whose perceptual capabilities far exceeded most known species, felt something was fundamentally wrong. "Run the quantum variant scan again," they instructed their primary analysis team. The initial readings defied every established galactic cartographic model. Microdimensional fluctuations suggested something impossible, an entire civilization existing in a state of quantum flux, simultaneously present and undetectable. Dr. Lyra Nauman, the human science officer assigned to the Concordance vessel as part of a complex diplomatic arrangement, watched the readings with a mixture of professional detachment and barely concealed excitement. She knew exactly what the data suggested, even if her alien colleagues did not. The research station they discovered wasn't a traditional installation. It was a living, adaptive system that seemed to breathe with its own ecological intelligence. Sensor arrays morphed and reconfigured in real time, creating complex geometric patterns that seemed to dance between multiple dimensional states. "It's not just technology," Lyra explained, her voice calm and precise. "It's an ecosystem of information and adaptation." The quantum probe's most advanced scanning systems began to break down. Each attempt to analyze the human research station resulted in increasingly bizarre data streams. Computational matrices collapsed. Predictive algorithms became nonsensical. It was as if the station itself was actively resisting traditional methods of observation. Kvex reviewed the initial reports with growing concern. The station exhibited characteristics that violated fundamental principles of technological development. Its defensive capabilities weren't just advanced, they were fundamentally alien in their approach. Entire asteroid fields could be transformed into coordinated defensive networks in milliseconds, but it wasn't a simple matter of weaponization. The system seemed to communicate with the surrounding space, negotiating rather than conquering. "We're looking at something beyond technology," Lyra said, tracing the complex data streams. "This is a form of distributed intelligence that makes our current understanding of civilization look like primitive cave drawings." The most shocking revelation came from the station's communication systems. When the quantum probe attempted to establish first contact, the response was unlike anything in galactic communication records. It wasn't a message in the traditional sense. It was a complex quantum information packet that contained multiple layers of meaning, scientific data, cultural context, and something that almost resembled a living narrative. Dr. Elena Rodriguez, who appeared briefly in a holographic transmission, seemed to look directly into the hearts of the alien observers. Her message was both a greeting and a challenge. "We are not what you expected." The transmission read, "We are what comes next." The defensive capabilities of the station were beyond comprehension. When the quantum probe's more aggressive scanning protocols were activated, the entire research installation seemed to fold into itself, becoming simultaneously more complex and less detectable. Kvex understood something profound in that moment. This wasn't just a technological advancement. It was an entirely new approach to existence, a civilization that didn't just adapt to environments, but actively negotiated with them. The station's quantum signature suggested multiple potential states of existence. It could be destroyed and reconstructed simultaneously. Its defensive systems weren't about protection. They were about transformation. Lyra watched as her alien colleagues struggled to process the information. The human research station represented something far more terrifying than a military threat. It was a fundamental challenge to everything the Galactic Concordance understood about intelligence, technology, and civilization. "They didn't just survive," she muttered, more to herself than to her colleagues. "They evolved." The transmission from the station continued, a complex quantum narrative that suggested more than it revealed. Each layer of information was a puzzle, each data stream a potential universe of meaning. The quantum probe's mission had been simple: reconnaissance. What they discovered was nothing short of a cosmic revolution. Humanity wasn't just back. They had become something entirely new. The diplomatic chamber on the neutral space station Concordia hung with an electric tension that defied traditional interstellar negotiations. Ambassador Marcus Rodriguez stood at the center, a holographic representation of human potential that was both invitation and challenge. The delegation from the Galactic Concordance represented 12 distinct species, each with communication protocols that had been carefully established over millennia. They expected a standard diplomatic encounter, measured responses, carefully parsed language, predictable political maneuvering. They were about to be fundamentally disappointed. Dr. Aria Chen, seated beside Marcus, was not a traditional diplomat. She was a living bridge between human potential and cosmic complexity, a deep space variant whose neural interfaces processed diplomatic nuance at quantum speeds. Her very presence was a statement. Humanity was no longer playing by established rules. The chamber itself was a marvel of adaptive technology. Walls shifted and recalibrated, creating dynamic spaces that responded to conversational dynamics. Translation systems weren't simply converting words, they were interpreting contextual layers of meaning that went far beyond traditional linguistic translation. Kvex, the crystalline representative of the Zarkex collective, initiated the opening protocols. Their communication was a complex lattice of electromagnetic pulses and dimensional harmonics, a language that had intimidated countless species for generations. Marcus didn't respond with words. Instead, a holographic projection unfolded, a living, breathing representation of human expansion. Star systems transformed before the delegates' perceptions, showing not just territorial claims, but ecological integrations. Each planetary system wasn't a conquest, but a complex negotiation between human potential and existing cosmic ecosystems. We are not seeking recognition, the holographic narrative suggested. We are offering a new paradigm of existence. The Concordance delegates realized something profound. This wasn't a typical diplomatic engagement. It was a fundamental reimagining of what interstellar cooperation could mean. Dr. Lyra Nauman, who had been part of the initial reconnaissance mission, provided contextual annotations to the holographic presentation. Her insights revealed layers of complexity that went beyond simple territorial expansion. Humanity had developed adaptive technologies that could transform entire planetary systems into collaborative ecological networks. The most shocking revelation came when Marcus presented the core of human diplomatic philosophy. It wasn't about dominance or submission. It was about potential, a cosmic approach that saw every species, every planetary system, as a potential collaborator in a larger evolutionary dance. Zintok, the methane-breathing representative from the crystalline consensus, struggled to process the implications. Their communication tendrils vibrated with a mixture of confusion and emerging respect. "You are not asking for a place in the galaxy," Zintok finally communicated. "You are redefining what the galaxy can become." The diplomatic engagement was unlike any in galactic history. Traditional power dynamics dissolved. Territorial claims became fluid ecological negotiations. Each moment of the discussion was a live demonstration of human adaptive potential. Aria Chen's neural interfaces processed the multidimensional conversation with remarkable precision. She wasn't just translating language. She was creating bridges of understanding that transcended traditional communication barriers. The Concordance delegates realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Humanity wasn't presenting a case for inclusion. They were offering a fundamental transformation of galactic civilization. "We do not seek to replace," Marcus's holographic representation suggested. "We seek to collaborate, to expand, to evolve." By the conclusion of the diplomatic session, the fundamental power dynamics of the galaxy had shifted. The Galactic Concordance entered the chamber expecting to manage a potentially disruptive species. They left understanding that humanity represented something far more profound, a living, adaptive intelligence that could reshape cosmic potential. The diplomatic crucible had transformed into something else entirely, a cosmic invitation. The final confrontation wasn't a battle. It was a revelation. Humanity didn't just survive exile. They transformed it into the most profound evolutionary leap any species had ever undertaken. They weren't conquerors. They were something entirely new, a civilization that turned limitation into innovation, exile into exploration. The universe would never be the same. Humanity, the species that rewrote the cosmic rules.